He saved 2 alien sisters from the cold. The reward was unbelievable. The blizzard came without mercy. Darius Kane secured the last shutter on his cabin window as wind screamed through the Alaskan wilderness like a living thing. 20 years as a wilderness guide had taught him to read the mountains, and tonight they spoke of danger. He'd already radioed the ranger station. No rescues would be possible until morning, and anyone caught outside wouldn't last an hour. He was preparing his evening meal when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the storm. A metallic groan followed by a distant crash that shook snow from the cabin's roof. Darius moved to the window, peering through the gap in the shutters. Orange light flickered somewhere beyond the tree line, maybe half a mile north. Something had gone down out there. Every instinct told him to stay inside. The temperature had dropped to 20 below, and visibility was near zero. But that same stubborn conscience that had driven him to pull 3 climbers from a crevasse last spring wouldn't let him ignore it. Someone might be dying out there. He layered thermal clothing, checked his beacon, and grabbed his emergency pack. The moment he stepped outside, the cold hit him like a physical blow. He lowered his head against the wind and pushed toward the orange glow, following the smoke trail that the storm couldn't quite disperse. What he found wasn't a downed aircraft, at least not any aircraft he recognized. The craft was embedded in a snowbank, its hull smooth and dark, marked with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Portions of it still glowed with residual heat, melting the snow around it into steaming pools. The design was wrong, too organic, too seamless, like it had been grown rather than built. Darius circled the wreckage carefully, his thermal scanner picking up 2 heat signatures inside. Survivors. The main hatch was partially open, jammed against a boulder. He wedged his ice axe into the gap and leveraged it wider, frigid air rushing out from within. Inside, 2 figures lay collapsed against what might have been acceleration couches. Both appeared female in form, dressed in fitted garments that shimmered even in the dim light from his headlamp. Their skin had an unusual pallor, not quite white, not quite silver, and their hair fell in shades he'd never seen on any human, deep violet and crystalline blue. The nearest one stirred as his light touched her face. Her eyes opened, large and luminous, the irises containing depths of color that seemed to shift between purple and gold. She tried to speak, but the words were musical and incomprehensible. "I've got you," Darius said, knowing she wouldn't understand but hoping his tone would convey intent. "We need to move. Now." She was lighter than he expected as he lifted her, though her body was solid and real in his arms. He carried her out into the storm, then returned for her companion. Younger looking, her features softer, her breathing more labored. The return journey to his cabin was brutal, the storm clawing at them as if resenting his defiance. Inside, he laid them both near the fireplace and began the careful process of warming them. He'd treated hypothermia before, knew the dangers of heating someone too quickly. He wrapped them in thermal blankets, elevated their feet, prepared warm liquids. The older one remained conscious, watching him with those impossible eyes. She reached out her fingers. He couldn't help but notice they were structured similarly to human hands, touching his wrist. The gesture seemed deliberate, significant. "You're safe now," he told her, though he had no idea if that was true. He didn't know what they were, where they'd come from, or what had brought them here. But he knew one truth that transcended all those questions. They were alive, and that was enough. As the fire crackled and the storm raged outside, Darius Kane had no way of knowing that this frozen night would reshape his entire existence, that saving 2 lives in the darkness would lead him to the stars themselves. The first week was a careful dance of survival and discovery. Darius converted his study into a second bedroom, giving the sisters his own room while he took the couch. They recovered slowly, their resilience remarkable but their disorientation profound. The younger one, who he learned was called Thyra through patient pointing and repetition, spent the first 3 days sleeping 18 hours at a stretch. The elder, Zayla, remained watchful even in weakness, her analytical gaze tracking his every movement. Communication evolved through necessity. Zayla possessed a quick, incisive intelligence that absorbed patterns rapidly. By the 4th day, she was stringing together basic English words, her accent rendering them musical. Thyra learned through emotion and gesture, laughing at Darius's exaggerated pantomimes, her warmth a counterpoint to her sister's reserve. "Your world, cold," Zayla said one evening, wrapped in blankets by the fire. Her vocabulary was expanding daily. "Just this part of it," Darius replied, showing her pictures on his tablet. Beaches, deserts, jungles. Her eyes widened at the diversity. "Beautiful. Dangerous beautiful." She looked at him directly. "Like you. Risk life for strangers. Couldn't leave you out there," he said, uncomfortable with the intensity of her attention. "On Vexera Prime, our home. Such action creates Kashira. Bond of life debt." She struggled for words. "You own our breath now. We are yours until debt repaid." "You don't owe me anything," Darius insisted. But Zayla shook her head firmly. "Not owe. Different concept. You not understand yet." The days blended into weeks. Darius taught them practical skills. Cooking human food, understanding Earth weather, basic survival techniques. Thyra delighted in everything, throwing snowballs with abandon, marveling at wildlife tracks. Zayla approached each lesson with focused intensity, mastering tasks with practiced efficiency. The crashed vessel yielded little salvage. Most systems were fused beyond repair. Zayla managed to activate a distress beacon, but their isolation meant rescue would take time. "Long distance," she explained. "Many star paths, perhaps 2 moon cycles, perhaps 6. They settled into an unexpected domesticity. Thyra learned to cook, experimenting wildly with spices until Darius's small kitchen produced aromas that were sometimes wonderful, occasionally catastrophic. Zayla documented everything in a journal with their flowing script, sketching observations with artistic precision. One night, Darius woke to find Zayla standing at his window, watching the aurora borealis paint the sky. "We have similar lights on Vexera Prime," she said softly, "but different colors. Watching them makes me nostalgic." She tested the word. "Homesick," Darius corrected gently, moving to stand beside her. "Yes, homesick." She was silent for a moment, but also conflicted. "This time with you, in this small place, I will miss it." Their eyes met in the window's reflection. The aurora cast her features in shifting greens and purples, highlighting the elegant lines of her face. Darius felt the air thicken between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. "Zayla," he began, but she stepped closer, closing the distance. "On my world, when two souls recognize each other, we do not hide behind words." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you feel it, Darius Kane? This pulling between us?" "Yes," he admitted, his heart hammering. "From the first moment I saw you." Her hand rose to touch his face, her fingers tracing his jawline with reverent curiosity. "Your features are different from ours, but I find them compelling, strong, honest." She smiled slightly. "Thyra says I study you like one of my scientific specimens. She is not wrong." Darius caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. "And what have your studies concluded?" "That I want to understand everything about you. Not just humanity, you." Her other hand joined the first, framing his face. "That I think about you during the day and dream of you at night. That I am terrified of my rescue ship arriving." He pulled her closer, his arms encircling her waist. She fit against him perfectly, her head tilting back to maintain eye contact. The aurora continued its dance outside, but neither of them noticed anymore. "I've never felt this way before," Darius confessed. "I've spent years alone in these mountains, convinced I didn't need anyone. Then you fell from the sky and changed everything." "Perhaps the universe knew," Zayla murmured. "Perhaps it guided our ship here deliberately." When their lips met, it was tentative at first, a careful exploration of difference and similarity. But hesitation gave way to hunger, and Darius discovered that despite her alien origin, Zayla's passion was entirely comprehensible. She responded with equal fervor, her fingers threading through his hair, a soft sound escaping her throat. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. "This complicates everything," she whispered. "I know. I do not care. Neither do I." They kissed again, deeper this time, hands exploring with increasing boldness. When they finally parted, Zayla's eyes held a glow that might have been literal or merely the reflection of emotion too strong to contain. "When my people come," she said firmly, "you will not be rid of me so easily, Darius Kane. I promise you this." It was a promise that would reshape worlds. The signal came on a clear February morning. Darius was splitting wood outside when Zayla's communicator, salvaged from the wreckage and painstakingly repaired, blazed to life with cascading tones. She emerged from the cabin at a run, Thyra close behind, both their faces alight with relief and something else. Regret, perhaps. The conversation was in their native tongue, rapid and musical. When Zayla finished, she stood holding the device for a long moment before turning to Darius. "They will be here in 3 days. The words hit him like a physical blow, though he'd known this moment would come. Thyra immediately moved to his side, taking his hand in both of hers. "We do not want to leave you," she said, her English now fluent though still charmingly accented. "You have become family, more than family." The next 3 days were bittersweet. They spent every moment together. Long walks through the winter forest, stories shared by firelight, lessons in Vexran culture that Darius tried desperately to memorize. At night, Zayla came to his room, and they lay together talking until dawn, hands intertwined, stealing kisses that tasted of goodbye. "Tell me about your world," Darius urged during one of these twilight conversations. "Really tell me. I want a picture where you'll be." Zayla settled deeper into his embrace, her head on his chest. "Vexra Prime orbits a binary star system. We have purple dawns and golden sunsets. Our cities grow from living crystal that responds to thought and intention. The central ocean contains bioluminescent life that creates light shows every evening." Her fingers traced patterns on his skin. "But it is also a world of strict hierarchy and political complexity. Thyra and I are from a prominent house. Our family serves in the diplomatic corps, managing relations with dozens of species." "Important work," Darius observed. "Yes, and when we return, we will be expected to resume our duties, to eventually form political alliances through bonding contracts." She tilted her head to look at him. "I will refuse." "Zayla." "I mean it, Darius. I have been shaped my entire life to serve my house's interests. But you have shown me something I never knew existed: choice, freedom, love without calculation." Her voice grew fierce. "I will not forget this. I will not forget you." On the final night, they made love with desperate intensity, memorizing each other's bodies, whispering promises that seemed both foolish and essential. Afterward, Zayla produced a small crystal from her belongings, pressing it into Darius's palm. "This is a quantum communicator," she explained, "keyed specifically to my biosignature. No matter where I am in the galaxy, you can reach me, and I can reach you." Her eyes held his. "It is also a promise. I will return to you, Darius Kane. I do not know how or when, but I will find a way." The rescue ship arrived at noon, a vessel that made their crash transport look like a lifeboat. It hovered silently over the clearing, impossible and magnificent. A ramp extended, and figures descended, tall, official, dressed in uniforms that shimmered with rank indicators. The reunion was formal, almost cold. The rescue team treated Zayla and Thyra with deference but little warmth, their glances at Darius ranging from curious to dismissive. One of them, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair, spoke rapid Vexran to Zayla, her tone clearly disapproving. Zayla's response was sharp enough to make the woman step back. Thyra added something that sounded equally defiant. The tension was palpable. "What's wrong?" Darius asked quietly. "Commander Vera believes our extended contact with you is inappropriate," Zayla said, her jaw tight. "She suggests we may have compromised ourselves by dwelling with a primitive species. Zayla is telling her that you are worth 10 of our finest warriors," Thyra added with satisfaction. "And I am agreeing very loudly." Despite the gravity of the moment, Darius smiled. Defending my honor? Always, Thyra said fiercely. She surprised him by pulling him into a tight embrace. You gave us life, warmth, and kindness when we had nothing. You showed us that nobility exists beyond rank and title. I will carry this lesson forever, Darius Kane. And I too make a promise. Should you ever need me, I will cross the stars to stand beside you. Zayla approached last. The rescue team had the grace to look away, giving them privacy. This is not goodbye, she said, taking both his hands in hers. This is only distance, time, obstacles to be overcome. I'll be here, Darius told her. Waiting. She kissed him then, publicly and thoroughly, uncaring of protocol or watching eyes. When they parted, her face was wet with tears. Keep the communicator close. I will call you when I can. And Darius, she touched his face one final time. You have ruined me for anyone else. I hope you know that. Good, he said roughly. Because you've done the same to me. She walked up the ramp without looking back. A mercy, perhaps. Thyra turned at the top, waving with both hands before disappearing inside. The ramp retracted. The ship rose silently, and within moments it was gone, leaving only disturbed snow and Darius standing alone in the clearing. He stood there until the cold forced him inside, the crystal communicator clutched in his fist, warm against his palm. In his cabin, everything reminded him of them. Thyra's drawings on the wall, Zayla's journal accidentally left behind, the indent in his mattress where she had slept. That night, he dreamed of purple dawns and golden sunsets, and of eyes that held the depths of stars. 5 years stretched ahead, unknown and endless. But Zayla had made a promise, and Darius Kane had learned that some bonds transcend even the vastness of space. The return. 5 years changed everything and nothing. Darius still lived in his cabin, still guided expeditions through the Alaskan wilderness, still split his own wood and watched the aurora dance across winter skies. But the solitary man who had pulled 2 aliens from a frozen night no longer existed. In his place was someone who checked the quantum communicator every morning, who had learned a dozen Vexern phrases, who slept with Zayla's journal under his pillow. Their communications had been sporadic at first, brief messages constrained by distance and Zayla's demanding duties. But gradually, as she and Thyra rose through the diplomatic corps, the messages became longer, richer. Zayla told him of political negotiations with species whose names he couldn't pronounce, of Thyra's growing reputation as a fierce advocate for cultural exchange, of her own machinations within the Vexern hierarchy. I am building something, she had told him during their last conversation, her holographic image flickering in his darkened cabin. Piece by piece, alliance by alliance. Be patient with me, my heart. I am coming back to you. That had been 3 months ago. Now, on a clear September evening, Darius was returning from a supply run when every instinct he'd honed over 2 decades in the wilderness suddenly screamed danger. The air felt wrong, charged, expectant. Birds had gone silent. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. Then the sky opened. The ship that descended was nothing like the rescue vessel. This was a diplomatic cruiser, elegant and powerful, its hull inscribed with symbols that proclaimed authority. It settled into the clearing with impossible grace, and Darius's heart began to race. The ramp extended. Figures emerged, an honor guard in formal uniforms, their movements precisely choreographed. And then, framed in light, Zayla appeared. She had changed. The woman who had huddled by his fireplace in borrowed clothes now wore robes that flowed like liquid starlight, marked with insignia that spoke of high rank. Her hair was styled in an intricate arrangement that incorporated what looked like crystalline ornaments. She carried herself with absolute authority. But when her eyes found his, they held the same warmth, the same desperate longing he felt in his own chest. Thyra emerged beside her, equally transformed. Where Zayla radiated controlled power, Thyra's presence suggested barely contained energy. She saw Darius and broke protocol entirely, sprinting down the ramp and launching herself into his arms. I told you, she exclaimed, squeezing him fiercely. I told you we would return. Zayla descended with more dignity, but her pace quickened with each step. When she reached him, the entire universe seemed to contract to just the two of them. "Darius Kane," she said formally, though her voice shook slightly. "I have returned to honor the Kashira bond created 5 cycles ago when you saved our lives." "Zayla," he managed, drinking in the sight of her. "You didn't have to." "I did." She stepped closer, near enough that he could see the pulse at her throat. "But that is not the only reason I am here." One of the honor guard cleared his throat pointedly. Zayla's eyes flashed with irritation, but she maintained composure. "Perhaps we should discuss this inside? We have much to explain, and—" She glanced at her entourage. Privacy would be preferable. Inside his cabin, surrounded by 6 members of her guard and diplomatic staff, Zayla seemed almost amused by the contrast between her formal retinue and his rustic home. Thyra immediately began pointing out things that had remained unchanged, chattering about memories. "5 years ago, you saved 2 refugees," Zayla began, her tone shifting into something more official. "Those refugees were Zayla and Thyra of House Velixer, daughters of the High Counselor of Vexera Prime's diplomatic assembly. Our loss was a source of great concern. Our recovery, a cause for celebration." "We told them everything," Thyra interjected. "How you risked your life in the storm, how you cared for us, how you asked nothing in return." "The story spread," Zayla continued. "In a society that values honor and duty above all, your actions became noteworthy, inspirational even." She paused. "Thyra and I spent 5 years advancing through diplomatic ranks, managing first contact protocols, negotiating treaties. We earned our positions, but your story opened doors. Respect was given because of the honor you reflected upon us." Darius frowned. "I don't understand. You came all this way to thank me?" "No." Zayla's expression intensified. "We came to offer you a choice." She gestured, and one of her staff activated a holographic display. Images materialized in the air, documents, legal frameworks, intricate diagrams. "Earth is on the cusp of formal contact with the greater galactic community," Zayla explained. "Within the next decade, your world will need liaisons, individuals who can bridge the gap between human culture and alien civilizations. The Vexern Diplomatic Corps, with approval from both our government and preliminary agreement from your world's coalition, is prepared to offer you a position." "Me?" Darius's voice cracked slightly. "I'm a wilderness guide. I have no political training, no?" "You have something more valuable," Thyra interrupted. "You have proven character. You understand that beneath different exteriors, life is life. You see individuals, not categories. That is rarer than you know." "The position comes with full Vexeran citizenship," Zayla said quietly. "An estate on Vexera Prime. Protection under House Velixer's authority. Access to education, technology, longevity treatments that would extend your lifespan to match ours." She paused. "And proximity to those who would wish to remain close to you." Their eyes met, and the professional facade cracked. Zayla's next words were raw, stripped of diplomatic polish. "I am asking you to leave your world and come to mine. I know it is enormous to ask. I know you have a life here, roots, a home you have built. But Darius, I have spent 5 years trying to forget you, trying to fulfill my duties without constantly wondering what you were doing, who you were with, if you ever thought of me." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I cannot do it anymore. I do not want to." "The alternative," Thyra added softly, "is that we return to Vexera Prime and you remain here, and we all spend the rest of our lives wondering what might have been." Darius looked around his cabin, at the life he had built in isolation, the safety of solitude he had once craved. Then he looked at the quantum communicator on his mantle, at Zayla's journal beside it, at the drawings Thyra had made that he had never been able to take down. He had been alone for so long before them. The thought of returning to that loneliness was unbearable. "When do we leave?" he asked. Zayla's breath caught. You accept?" "I've been waiting 5 years for you to come back," Darius said, moving to stand before her. "Did you really think I'd let you leave again?" She kissed him then, protocol abandoned, her staff politely averting their eyes. When they broke apart, she was laughing and crying simultaneously. "I love you, Darius Kane," she said in Vexaran. Then in English, "I have loved you since you carried me through a blizzard. I will love you until the stars burn out." "I love you too," he replied. "I just hope I'm ready for whatever comes next." Thyra grinned. "You saved 2 alien sisters from freezing to death. I think you can handle anything." 2 days later, Darius left Earth carrying only what mattered: some photographs, Zayla's original journal, and a heart full of impossible hope. The stars, he discovered, were waiting. Among the stars, the city of Velixandra defied description. Darius stood on the balcony of his new estate. His estate, a concept still surreal, watching the binary sunset paint the sky in gold and purple. The city spread below him in organic spirals, buildings grown from living crystal that pulsed with bioluminescent light as evening approached. In the distance, the celestial ocean began its nightly display, millions of luminescent organisms creating patterns that resembled constellations. "Still overwhelming?" Zayla asked, emerging from inside with 2 glasses of something that tasted like starlight and honey. "Every single day," Darius admitted. "I've been here 6 months, and I still see something that stops me in my tracks." She settled beside him, fitting naturally under his arm. 6 months of living together had erased any remaining awkwardness. She wore informal robes now, her hair loose around her shoulders in the way she knew he loved. "How was the council session?" he asked. "Productive. The Terran delegation is warming to formal contact protocols. Your insights about human social dynamics were invaluable." She smiled up at him. "They are beginning to understand why I insisted on having an Earthborn advisor." Darius's integration into Vexaran society had been challenging but rewarding. His official role was cultural liaison for Earth-Vexaran relations, but his real education had been in understanding the intricate social hierarchies, the unspoken protocols, the delicate balance of power that governed every interaction. Thyra had become his guide and fierce protector. Now a commander in the diplomatic corps, she had made it clear to anyone who questioned Darius's presence that insulting him meant insulting her directly, a prospect no one seemed eager to pursue. "There is something I wish to discuss with you," Zayla said carefully, her tone suggesting importance. Darius turned to face her fully. "I'm listening." On Vexera Prime, when 2 individuals wish to formalize their bond, they undergo takshora, a bonding ceremony that is both legal contract and spiritual union. It is roughly analogous to human marriage, though more binding. Her fingers traced patterns on his chest, a nervous gesture. "I wish to perform takshora with you." His heart began to race. "You want to marry me?" "I want to bind my life to yours in every way my culture recognizes," she corrected gently. "It would grant you additional legal protections, elevate your status within House Velixer, and—" She met his eyes. "It would make official what my heart has known since that first winter together. You are my chosen partner, Darius Kane. I want the universe to know it." "Yes," he said immediately. "Whatever it involves, however complicated, yes." Her smile was radiant. "The ceremony is 3 days from now. I may have already made arrangements." "Confident, weren't you?" "I know your heart," she said simply. "As you know mine." The Takshora ceremony took place in the Hall of Eternal Bonds, a structure of pure crystal that captured and refracted light into impossible patterns. Hundreds attended: dignitaries, diplomatic staff, members of House Velixer, and a delegation from Earth that included several very confused but supportive government officials. Thyra stood as Zayla's bonding witness, resplendent in ceremonial armor. She had given Darius extensive coaching on proper responses and timing, her affection for him evident in every carefully explained detail. The ceremony itself was beautiful and strange. Vows spoken in Vexaran and English, exchanges of crystalline tokens that represented life force and commitment, a ritual binding where their hands were wrapped together with light itself. When the officiant declared them bonded, the entire hall erupted in harmonious tones that Darius had learned was the Vexaran equivalent of celebration. Zayla kissed him thoroughly, uncaring of the audience. "You are mine," she whispered against his lips. And I am yours. Across all distance, time and space. Forever, he agreed. The celebration afterward was lavish. Darius found himself speaking with beings from a dozen different species, all curious about the human who had won the heart of one of Vexara's most prominent diplomats. He told the story of that frozen night over and over, each time marveling at how a single decision had led to this impossible life. Late in the evening, he found Thyra on one of the upper balconies, looking out over the city. Hiding from the party? He asked, joining her. Observing, she corrected. Making sure certain political rivals of Zayla's do not cause trouble during her bonding celebration. She glanced at him. I take my role as your protector seriously, you know? I know. And I'm grateful. He paused. Thyra, I want you to know, you're not just Zayla's sister to me. You're family. My family. She turned to him, her eyes bright with emotion. You gave me my life back twice. Once in the snow and again when you chose to come here. You gave me my sister's happiness. She took his hands. I swear to you, Darius Kane, bonded of my sister, that I will stand guard over your life and safety as long as I draw breath. That is not mere sentiment. It is Kashira, and I honor it gladly. I don't need a guard, he said gently. Perhaps not. But you have one anyway. She smiled. Besides, someone must ensure you do not accidentally insult a Zytherian ambassador or mistake a formal bow for a casual greeting. He laughed. Fair point. Later, in the privacy of their estate, Zayla led Darius to their chambers. The room was filled with soft light, the walls displaying gentle patterns that created an atmosphere of intimacy and peace. My bonded mate, she said, testing the words. It sounds right. Feels right. It is right, Darius agreed, pulling her close. Though if you'd told me 5 years ago that I'd end up married to an alien diplomat on a planet orbiting binary stars, I'd have thought you were insane. And yet here you are. She began unfastening his ceremonial robes with practiced ease. Do you regret it? Leaving Earth? Your old life? Not for a second. He cupped her face, thumbs stroking her cheeks. You asked me once if I felt the pulling between us. That hasn't changed, Zayla. It's only gotten stronger. They came together with the passion of lovers who had waited too long, who had crossed impossible distances, who had overcome every obstacle to reach this moment. Their lovemaking was tender and fierce by turns, a conversation without words, a claiming and a surrender. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Zayla traced the bonding mark that had appeared on Darius's wrist during the ceremony. A crystalline pattern beneath the skin that would mark him as hers forever. I used to believe my life was predetermined, she murmured. That duty and honor demanded I sacrifice personal desires. Then you showed me that the greatest honor is in choosing love, even when it complicates everything. You gave me purpose, Darius replied. I was hiding in those mountains, pretending isolation was contentment. You and Thyra crashed into my life and showed me what I'd been missing. Do you think the universe guided our ship to you deliberately? She asked. Or was it merely chance? Does it matter? He kissed her forehead. We're here now. That's what counts. 3 years later, Darius stood in the Vexaran Grand Council chambers, representing Earth in formal negotiations for cultural exchange programs. His Vexaran was fluent now, his understanding of galactic politics sophisticated. He had become exactly what Zayla and Thyra had seen potential for, a bridge between worlds. But more than that, he had found something he'd never thought possible, home. Not a place, but people. A wife whose brilliance and passion continued to amaze him daily. A sister by bond who would defend him against any threat. Purpose that mattered. A life among the stars that felt more real than anything he'd known on Earth. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, he and Zayla would stand on their balcony watching the bioluminescent ocean, and he would think about that frozen night. About the choice to step into the storm instead of staying safe and warm. About how easily he might have missed this entire life. What are you thinking? Zayla would ask, because she always knew when his mind drifted. That I'm grateful, he'd reply. For the cold, for the crash, for every moment that led to you. She would smile then, that particular smile reserved only for him, and kiss him softly. "Come," she'd say, "let us go inside. Tomorrow brings new challenges, new worlds to bridge. But tonight we have each other, and that is enough." And it was more than enough. It was everything.